Hey Phil, this is Cameron.
Hey, what's up, Kim?
Man, I gotta talk to you about something. Have you been watching the news?
Dude, what is going on? Pocket politics with Phil and Cam. Why? Why are we doing this?
I think it's gonna matter.
The only thing they want to talk about is guns and abortion.
My own views, I want to see the Republicans get away from the social issues.
I'm not saying that Republicans are idiots.
You hear something like that, it's powerful.
As an American, I was disgusted.
You could make the argument that you're probably more in the middle as well.
I think that's just a story that somebody's telling you.
Again, well, with the facts, this is true. Everybody knows
What
it.
facts?
So-
What facts? Who does this hurt more, Republicans or Democrats?
Boy, I've been thinking about that.
Welcome back to Pocket Politics with Phil and Cam. Cameron, how are you doing this week?
I'm doing great. How are you tonight?
I'm fantastic. So tonight we got several topics. We've got Hurricane Ian, what's going on after the initial damage assessments.
We're going to talk some about marijuana and its legalization or possible legalization.
Absolutely. New revelations around Hunter Biden as well.
And of course, it wouldn't be a show without some Donald Trump news.
Absolutely. So we've got Donald Trump news, and in addition to that, we've got big happenings with the Proud Boys and the Oath Keepers, Cameron.
Yes, we do. We're also going to talk about Ben Sass. There's some news about Senator Sass.
The Nebraska senator, and we're going to talk about the Senate candidate from Georgia, Herschel Walker, and then lead into races with the Georgia Senate race.
Yeah, and we're going to talk also in Georgia. We'll talk about the 14th House race down there, and we're also going to look at the Colorado's 3rd District House race, the one with Lauren Boebert. We'll give an update on that one, and we got one other Senate race to talk about, don't we, Phil?
Yeah, and then finally, I think the Washington Senate race, right?
Yes, we do. Okay, that looks like a busy show. So why don't we get started?
Fantastic, Cam. Go ahead with Hurricane Ian. What's going on down in Florida?
Yeah, so Hurricane Ian, I mean, we talked about this last show, hits Florida, just decimates Florida. But this week, we see signs of Florida starting to rebuild, digging out from the hurricane. President Biden made an appearance down in Florida. He met with Governor Ron DeSantis. And, what I thought was encouraging, and I think everybody should kind of take from it too, was the fact that the president and the governor, I mean, we all know they've had political differences and they've sparred a lot, right, wrong, or indifferent. But those two shook hands. They had their wives together. They toured the area. They held a press conference. Throughout the conference, both of them talked about leaning on one another and their resources, the feds to the state, et cetera, to help get that state rebuilt. And I thought that was encouraging. How about you, Phil?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I think it was good. One of the things that I do, kind of want to point out is a couple of things. One, the first being that, all of the congressional Republicans from Florida voted against the continuing resolution, which contained the more than $10 billion for Florida relief for Hurricane Ian. What I don't understand how all of the Florida Republican congressional members are voting against that when it's so much needed by their state. The second thing is, Florida had a lot of natural disaster relief money that was left over from COVID that could have been used for this hurricane, but instead a lot of that was used flying immigrants to other states.
Yeah, I don't have data. Yeah, I don't have data on all that right now. Like I said, I know just kind of what I've been looking at here lately is what's going on between the president and the governor. The president's he's offering up money. Like I said, right, wrong, or indifferent, things in the past are what they are. I just think Florida's in a state right now that they need rebuilding. They need some positive signs of hope. I think they got some this
Absolutely.
week with the president down there.
Yeah, I think it did help. It showed them kind of working together, and helping they got FEMA involved, various government funds and organizations are involved helping it out as well. So I think that's good.
Yeah,
Moving on, the president this week announced that he is going to make a giant federal pardon and potential for sweeping legislation around marijuana drug laws. What do you think?
you know what? You're not going to get any pushback from me, and I will tell you, I've said for a while now that I think marijuana is one of those things that we're at a point in this country where I think a lot of people want it legal.
Yeah,
I don't because I
yeah.
don't
So speak.
I just wanted to say this, Phil, too. I personally like I don't view it any different than alcohol. If anything, I mean alcohol is probably worse, right? I mean marijuana is a natural plant. Alcohol is all distilled and brewed, what put through all these processes. If you look at it, right, it tears apart people, families, alcoholism. The effects of alcoholism is not pretty, and alcohol is widely used in this country. Don't honestly
Yeah,
see marijuana
absolutely.
that much different. I don't now. I'm not saying I want to use it. I'm just saying I don't see it as that much different. You're not going to get any pushback from me on this. I'm fine with it. To be honest with you, I know there are some people saying, "Oh, it's a gateway drug" and all that. Look, alcohol is probably the biggest gate. Alcohol and tobacco are probably the biggest gateway drugs out there, in my opinion.
Yeah. So what I was going to say is, that last year there was a Pew Research study done. Full legalization for recreational use has like a 60% approval rating in the country. 60%. And then possible full legalization with maybe there's some medical restrictions in there, so it's like medical use is authorized. That bumps the number up to 80 or 91% with less than 8% of Americans thinking that they don't want this. So this could be a huge boost for the president. So also in this, he's urging the states to go look at their how many people they have for simple marijuana possession, because it's not every marijuana related crime, it's just simple possession, so it doesn't
Yeah,
apply to like trafficking and
right.
to dealing, right, all these other things. It's just if you just got caught on an airplane possessing some marijuana, you're released now, right,
Yeah,
your sentence is commuted. So and that's what he's doing. He's asking the states to go back and do the same thing.
I think, and I
um
think I was going to say I think you're going to see a number of states doing that. I mean, I don't think there's like I said, I think there's a lot of appetite for this. Yeah, I'm not pushing back. I'll there's several Republicans came out and said they were for it. I don't know if you saw this, Phil, but Nancy Mace of South Carolina came out with a statement, and she just said, "You know what? I'll give credit where credit is due. Way to go on the president." And there was some other Republicans making similar statements. So I
well,
don't
not to
think this is
mention, I mean,
damaging.
not to mention, this is really good for state and local economies. It's really good for like school systems, right? Like the school system in my state benefits a lot from legal sale money. It's really good for small businesses because there's a lot of small businesses surrounding these. I mean, there's all kinds of benefits that this brings to the table. So he's urging the states to do it. The third thing that he's doing is he's asking that the people who schedule drugs to go back and take a look at how they schedule them. So did you know that weed or marijuana is scheduled at the same level as heroin and ecstasy,
Yes, and
and it's
LSD.
yeah, and it's scheduled at a higher level than fentanyl and meth and
You know,
oxycontin and cocaine and
so
ketamine.
so I actually yes, because I was reading about that. Since this has been in the news, I actually read that. So yeah, it's kind
Yeah.
of wild when you think about it.
So yeah, not only are we not going to get pushback from you on this, you're not going to get any pushback from me on this. I think it's a good thing.
But I, I
Um,
I I wanted to say though, Phil. I mean, going forward, I don't think we're that many years off from full legalization in this country. That's my opinion. I mean, I may be wrong, but I think we're heading in that direction. We're not quite there yet, but we've made some real strides over the last few years, and I think we're heading that direction. What do you think?
I think you're absolutely right. So I think it's going to be a really good thing. I hope we get there sooner rather than later. Like I said, I've lived in, well, now 3 states where it was fully legal, and it seems like it's doing good things on the local and state level. It's weird dynamic too that it's more affordable. I've got some relatives who use marijuana, and they drive to legal sales states so that they can get it just because it's cheaper than the black market. And it's probably going to lower crime, I just see the benefits of this going far vastly beyond your average Joe being able to smoke a joint,
Well,
right?
I think it's definitely going to lower crime. I mean, let's face it, cops aren't going to be running around worrying about simple possession anymore. I mean, that in and of
Yeah,
itself will lower crime, and and as we get closer to full legalization, right, there is less of the black market as we start regulating it more. So definitely lowering crime. And like I said, there is some argument from some people in the country, right, probably some Democrats, right, older, maybe some older people or whatever, but it seems to be the argument is, again, the gateway drug and what does this lead to? But like I said earlier, I think the big gateway drug in this country is alcohol and probably tobacco tossed right in there. So, I mean, I think a lot of people that work their way up the food chain of drugs, if you will, I think their beginning one is alcohol. That's my 2 cents. We've tried, in this nation's history, we've tried, to make alcohol illegal. That did not work at all. And I think we've seen over the years that the marijuana stuff just isn't working for a drug that it doesn't really seem to be harming people at an alarming rate.
yeah.
So,
Um,
but moving
Now,
on,
speaking of
yeah, I was going to
drug
say,
use,
well, yeah, I was going to say, moving on from that one, since we're talking about the president, how about his son, who's back in the news? He's in there quite a bit. Phil, have you seen about Hunter Biden and his latest tax and false statement issues he's got going on?
yeah. So it looks like they're saying now that they've probably got enough evidence to bring charges on two different kind of accounts. One is false statements leading to the purchase of a firearm. The second was some form of tax fraud or tax evasion. Um, here's what I got to say about this: is if this guy is the only person that does drugs and lies about it when purchasing an ammo or a firearm, we're probably vastly misled, right? That seems to me like this is probably a fairly common offense. And then also, if you're rich and entangled in relation to politics or just big business in general, you're probably also guilty of some form of tax fraud. So I don't really see this as like some big incriminating thing. Even though it's the president's son, it's not like the former president, right? Whose kids were
Yeah.
all government employees because they all held positions within the White House. This guy's not associated with it. And more
Well,
importantly, hold on, I think the president is doing the right thing because, Trump had appointed a judge to look into Hunter Biden activity, like legal activity. And when Biden came into office, he said, "Yeah, continue on, continue on. I'm not going to interfere." He's said again, he's not going to interfere with it. He said, if my son makes mistakes, my son makes mistakes. I just don't think this is it. Like, I think he's going to get the president himself is going to get a bigger win with the last topic that we had. Vice the points of people like, oh, his son is addicted to drugs, which he's admitted that he had a history of.
his son has been nothing but a problem. I mean, he was kicked out of the Navy for drug use. He's had countless kind of problems, fathered children out of wedlock. He's done all kinds of things, right? Affairs, you name it. Now, again, I'm not saying he's the only person that's ever done it, right? But I think this just continues to be a stain on the president. And Biden is at a point where he needs wins, right? And he's been championing wins, and I've given him credit for some, as of other people certainly, but this, it's just kind of this reoccurring nightmare, if you will, for him. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of people out there that talk about him using, his father's politi- you know, political ties, if you will, for his own financial gains. I don't know. I'm not sitting here investigating the guy, but it sure seems like he's had a very, very, very checkered past.
Yeah,
Um,
but listen, we've got other
yeah,
presidents
I
and
got it.
presidents' relatives that have done this.
I
This is
got it.
not the first
But
time this has happened.
but we need to, he's had there's some checkered stuff in there between Ukraine. I mean, there's this infamous laptop of his that's, been all over the
Yeah, but
news now. I,
most of that has been debunked.
well, not
I
all. I
mean,
mean,
that holds as much water as like Gate.
not all of it. There's, I was reading there is still some ongoing stuff about his laptop and the Ukraine ties. Here's what I'm going to say though. The guy's got a lot of problems. The president, at the end of the day, it's his son, so there's nothing. I mean, he can do about it. But what he needs to do is what you said earlier: not get in the way of this. And if there is truly crimes they're committed, they need to come out, and the guy needs to face charges just like anybody else would in these situations. I don't think we're going to see this
Yeah, but
go away.
not everybody else does that in these situations,
What
right?
lies about on a firearm purchase thing or has
No,
tax
commits
crimes?
crimes and then doesn't own up to it and face the charges.
Well, what I'm saying is he
I
needs
mean,
to.
look. Jared Kushner got paid like $2 billion from the Saudis last year for
Yeah, but
for
right,
doing what?
right, and you know
$2 billion,
and you
like,
know what, the
and
Trump,
he held a
but
White House position.
so okay, great, but the Trump every day, Trump and his children are being wrung through the ringer by just about every media, figurehead in the country. It's only fair. Look,
Yeah, because
Trump and his
it's
kids have
looking like
made,
they committed.
yeah, and it looks like Hunter Biden did too. And and along with many other people, want to see this guy,
The
own up
difference
to it.
is, yeah, but the difference is he doesn't hold an official position. All those people held an official position and were getting paid by the taxpayers
Okay, but going back to Biden, all right.
to work on behalf of the United States of America. But Hunter Biden is not getting paid
So,
by the taxpayers to work on behalf of the United States of
so
America.
again, I'll say this: this is not going to go away uh, anytime soon. I don't think. It looks like he's going to be brought up on charges. Um, I and I will say this: I don't think it is some kind of drastic thing against the president. I mean, I don't think it's going to sink his approval overnight or anything, but it doesn't help him either. He doesn't. Like I said, he has kind of climbed up in his approval rate. I say kind of. He has said some climbing over the summer of his approval rating. He doesn't need this right now. This is a stain on him. While it may not hurt him tremendously, like I said, I don't think it helps him. Let's see where this comes out. I mean, I think he's going to get. Well, I don't even want to say I think he's going to get this, that, or the other. I don't think it's going to go away. I think Phil, the best thing we do is just watch this in the coming weeks and see where this goes. But I wanted
Yeah,
to.
I mean, I do agree with you on that. I will say though that I think Biden has done an expert job at managing this. Right, right. Like I said, he has publicly stated he's not going to interfere in any way. And he's talked about some of the troubles his son has been through. Um, he's been very open about it. So I think he's handled it about as well as he can. You
Okay,
know.
so let's look. Moving on, as we're talking about presidents and scandals, why don't we go to our weekly Trump news here? It looks like he's requesting the Supreme Court to review the 11th Circuit appeal stay order here. Phil, what do you think about that?
Well, so I think we need to rewind a little bit just to kind of give some background and talk about how this came about. So this kind of started like last Friday, and I know we had the podcast on Saturday, but we didn't really hear about this until this week. But last Friday, the Justice Department basically came out and said Judge Cannon wants to keep denying the special master's ability to do what he was put there to do and asked to go there and do by the Trump camp and by Judge Cannon, then the Justice Department is going to basically oppose that based on her jurisdiction. So if we go back a week, um, we know that, or we go back a couple of weeks, we know that Trump camp wanted the special master, right? And
Yeah.
they found this judge that was in the 11th Circuit of Florida that's not in the jurisdiction of Mar-a-Lago that would approve the appointment of a special master. Then they get a special master, and then the judge who appointed the special master and said they get it in the first place is impeding the work of the special master, right? So the Justice Department said, no, 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 that's not going to work. If you're going to keep messing around in this, we're going to appeal the fact that you don't even have jurisdiction in this case. So once that happened, that this is like utterly crazy to me. The Trump camp basically filed this special appeal to the Supreme Court to say, oh no, the Justice Department can't do this. This is an 11th Circuit issue and not a federal issue, right? And that's essentially what they're asking for. It's a little bit more complicated than that, but again, we've said this many times. We're not lawyers. Um, Now, the crazy detail of this is that all the Supreme Court justices have specific jurisdictions of their own. So when there's a specific appeal, they take the case and kind of write the preliminary decision. Cameron, you know who the justice that's going to hear this case is?
Yeah, it's Thomas, but
Of course, yeah, Clarence Thomas, right? Now, do you think that makes a difference?
no. I mean, I don't. I mean, I'll be honest, I don't. I mean, I was reading up on this earlier, right? I mean, uh, it's gonna if this goes all the way through to the Supreme Court, right, and they end up voting on it, he's gonna need Trump will need 5 justices to get his win, I guess, if you will. Um, there hasn't been a lot of appetite from the Supreme Court as a whole on supporting Trump and some of these issues in the past. I don't see it necessarily being that way this time either. I mean, obviously, if it goes through, et cetera, I mean, it's got to go to him, but I don't see that being a huge issue. I think the court looks at it, makes their decision.
I do agree, and eventually, even after Justice Thomas, writes his preliminary decision, it still has to go and get reviewed by the rest of them,
Yep.
regardless of what he thinks.
Yep.
So it is going to get looked at. I will though say, in all fairness, there was another case surrounding the former president that ended up in an 8-1 ruling in the Supreme Court, and Clarence Thomas was he was the one out of the 9 that actually um, decided in that way. So he
Correct.
has been a 1 of 9 vote for Trump in the past.
No, I agree with you on that. But all I'm saying is this is, at the end of the day, this goes to the Supreme Court if it does. I just, yeah, Thomas may vote one way, but I think the court is not going to necessarily go along with that. I think the court doesn't come out in Trump's favor on this as they haven't really in the past. Um, so yeah, I mean Thomas can say what he wants, but I mean looking at the other judges, I mean I think or justices, I think they're going to take a look at this and review it. And yeah, I don't know that Trump gets his win at the Supreme Court like he and his lawyers may think they're going to.
Yeah, and so the other thing too is that it's like a really interesting kind of back and forth, and then there's some other details we'll talk about here in a minute that surround this. But his judge or his attorney, this attorney Haba, was on Fox News this week, basically saying, she made a couple statements, right? One of the things she said was that this is the Justice Department just to slow this case down because they don't want us to. They need more time to put their case together, so they need to slow things down, right? But then she said in the same interview, a couple minutes later, well, they're just trying to get this done before the midterms, right? So I don't, she kind of did this a couple of times, right, where she said, "Oh, the Justice Department is trying to slow things up or slow things down while speeding things up." And then she had a couple other things too. She compared these documents to a library book that wasn't turned in on time. And this goes back to when we talk about Trump kind of incriminating himself. When we go back to him talking about when we talk about him incriminating himself just by talking, his lawyers aren't doing a very good job either. And probably that has something to do with there's no good lawyers out there that are left that will represent him. But I don't know. I mean, that I think comparing this to a library, an overdue library book is a little bit ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean he's been going back and or his lawyers have been going back and forth trying to grasp what they can. We talked about in podcasts in the past about his legal team liking to stall. His legal team being Trump's legal team liking to stall if they can. We've talked about a lot of this stuff in the past. These are tactics we've seen him use before. Probably not the last time we're going to see him use them. Yeah, like I said, I'll be curious though to see ultimately how this goes with the court. Like I said, I think we're supposed to find out some stuff fairly soon on this. From what I was reading, it's going to move pretty quick, I guess. With Thomas, I think Thomas is he gave the Department of Justice, I think, till Tuesday to get their stuff in for him to start his review or whatever. So
Yeah. The other thing that I want to say too is that it was released within the last day or two that the Justice Department and the National Archives are kind of both in agreement that they don't have all of the documents yet, which is another, kind of troubling sign for the Trump camp, based on the fact that they already submitted a signed deposition once saying that they had turned in all the documents. That was well before more documents were found during the Mar-a-Lago raid. And the Justice Department and the National Archives, NARA, are coming back and saying, nope, turns out he's still got more documents. What are your thoughts on that?
I I mean I'm not shocked. I'm not. Yeah, this document thing. This is. We talked earlier about Hunter Biden, right? And he just never seems to go away from Biden's side. These documents are the thorn in Trump's side now that just doesn't seem to go away, right? And so, yeah, no,
Yeah, I would say one of the thorns. He's also got this case in Georgia, the civil case in New York. That is probably going to turn into another federal case. He's got multiple thorns.
yeah, again, we'll see how this one goes. From a legal standpoint with the Supreme Court here, we should hear something pretty soon. But speaking of legal things, uh, how about the Proud Boys? And they seem to be in the news with some seditious conspiracy stuff here. Phil, what do you think about that?
Yeah, so one of the Proud Boys. I didn't hear. Did you hear about kind of what position this person held or how high up they were?
Actually, I did. Yes,
Um,
yeah, I did actually. So the guy's name is Jeremy Bertino, and he's from North
okay.
Carolina, and he's a leader of, I think, like a regional leader. I don't exactly know how their rank structure goes, but he's not the top guy. The national chair is
Yeah,
a
he's
guy.
not
The guy, the
Enrique.
top, yeah, the top guy is Enrique Tarrio, the national chair, if
Yep.
you will. So he's not there, but it sounds like he's not too far below the food chain from the national chair. So anyway, yeah, he's out of North Carolina, and he's either a state or a regional leader. So he's definitely got or had a position of some power in the Proud Boys.
Yeah, he's big time enough to get one of these seditious conspiracy charges, which is seditious conspiracy is possibly one of the worst charges you can get, other than sedition itself, right? When you say and treason, obviously. Um, so it's a big deal. I think this is a really bad sign. I think this shows now they've got cooperating witnesses, right? That are high enough up, that realize that that in order to not get uh, the rest of their life in jail, they're gonna have to come over and give some more information to the feds.
Yeah, it sounds like with this guy, the guy out of North Carolina, Spertino, who just pled guilty on these matters. It sounds like they've got plenty of evidence that he was involved with the national cheerleader and um, all kinds of stuff. So Phil, is this just a sign of a lot more to come from like the Proud Boys and some of these groups? We saw the Oath Keepers; they're in the news too. So is this leading to more and more here? I don't think it stops with this Bertino guy, does it?
No, and this is kind of like if they compare them to the old mob cases. That's what they would do. They would go in and get somebody fairly high up to flip and rat everybody else out, and I think that's exactly what they're doing. Is that they got this guy that basically plead guilty. Keep in mind too, there were a lot of people saying that this seditious conspiracy charge is one of the hardest things to convict too, and And it turns out that while some legal experts may think that this is fairly hard to convict on, they're not even going to have to convict him because he's pleading guilty.
Yeah, I
So
mean,
I think
he,
that's an interesting component to this, is that he is entering a guilty plea. So they don't even have to put in the legwork to
no,
convict this guy.
yeah, I was going to say that. This guy's dug his own grave. The question is now, though, like who he takes down with him. And I think there's potential he brings a lot of people down with him.
Well, yeah, I agree, and I think this only makes, so when we talk about legal experts saying that seditious conspiracy is pretty hard to charge, it's definitely not hard. It's not as hard to charge other people with it and convict them if one of the people that was already charged not didn't even put up their case, just pled guilty, and now he's going to give other people's names and activities that were potentially doing the same thing that he is admittedly guilty of, right? So I think this is really bad for the organization. I think it's really bad for a lot of the people who were organized and participating in January 6th. Um, but as you mentioned, we also had big news in the seditious conspiracy hearing for the Oath Keepers leader, right?
Yeah, Stuart Rhodes. Yeah, he's on trial himself. So things don't seem to be going too well for him either, do they?
No, and I will mention that he's also, on a kind of funny note, he's like the only other guy that you ever see besides the Texas senator or Texas congressman that wears an eye patch still.
How did I know
Um,
you? How did I know you were going to go there?
well,
But
what's even funnier is why Stuart Rhodes wears an eye patch.
I don't.
This is good trivia for you. He wears it because he accidentally shot himself in the eye.
Yeah, so you know what? In all fairness here to Representative Crenshaw, who you brought up a minute ago, who lost his eye to an IED in combat, I don't think Mr. Rhodes and his eye patch quite compares to Mr. Crenshaw's.
No, that's why I wanted to bring up that he lost it because he accidentally shot himself in the eye.
Yeah.
Because I think that's hilarious.
But he's certainly got his legal troubles too. I mean, it from what I'm hearing, it looks like, or the New York Times reported, he's even urged or was urging Trump to invoke the Insurrection Act. There's all kinds of stuff going on with this guy.
Yeah, and the biggest development too is that there's a guy testifying against him in his case, a former Oath Keeper who said that um, that Stuart Rhodes had contacts within the Secret Service, right? Or that he alleged they were within the Secret Service because he overheard phone conversations at a Trump rally in North or South Carolina. I don't remember exactly which one that the Oath Keepers were at. So again, this looks really bad. And unlike the other guy, Stuart Rhodes is the de facto head of the Oath Keepers, so
Well,
he's
yeah,
the very top of the organization.
yeah, I was going to say that too. This is the guy at the top of their food chain. But again, they seem to be unraveling too. I mean, you've got Oath Keepers now who are talking about how their organization and probably others that were working with them brought or were talking about bringing all these firearms into Washington D.C. for rallies and their little empire, if you will, just seems to be crumbling around them. So yeah, I mean, I really don't see it ending well for Stuart Rhodes. I mean, going back to the guy, the Proud Boys guy, that Bertino. I mean, given that he just outright pled guilty so quickly, I mean, it looks like there's probably a little something in it for him, right? If he decided to flip. So I mean, I'll be curious, I guess, to see how that whole thing works out. But I mean, yeah, between the structure of the Oath Keepers and the Proud Boys, it looks like they've got a lot of problems on their hands right now, Phill. And I think, yeah, I think we're going to hear a lot about them in the coming weeks and months in the news.
Yeah, and the last thing I want to say on this is that we got to remember these, these are not the first Oath Keepers or Proud Boys that have already been handed the heavy arm of the law, right? I mean, there's already been multiple members of both of those organizations that have gotten pretty harsh sentences to this point, and I think it's only going to get worse. I think the sentencing times are only going to get longer, and the punishment's only harsher. But with that being said, we kind of, at least for me, kind of some sad news. What do you think about Senator Ben Sass of Nebraska?
So, I mean, you mentioned you were a bit saddened. I'm certainly saddened too because I've been a fan of Senator Sass for a while now, and he just this week the news breaks that he's expected to resign at some point after the midterm elections, is what they're saying. Looks like he's a finalist for president of the University of Florida, and yeah, I mean, Phil, here's my thoughts on this as far as Senator Sass is concerned. Honestly, I think the guy's tired of politics, and I think he's ready to get out of them. Like I just, I mean, let's not forget he's a guy who he voted to impeach Trump. I mean, he's, I do, I think he sees, I think he just sees it as a politics as a mess right now. Maybe not something he's happy doing, and I think he's looking for a way to get out, and maybe he's looking at it too. Um, with that whole impeachment or when he voted to impeach Trump, let's not forget he's up for reelection or would be up for reelection in 2024. Maybe he looks at it and says, "Man, I don't want to get primaried out. I've got a shot at this gig in Florida. Let me just get out of here and move on to something else." I mean, Phil, what do you think? Why is he leaving, or what are your thoughts on Senator Sass?
I think you're exactly right. Honestly, I think he's looking at his future. He's got a really good job. I mean, let's be completely honest. The president of the university is a especially good job, and even more so if it's the head state university of a large state, right? I think he's doing it for kind of a dynamic, but all of your reasoning is spot on. I think he doesn't want to deal with the political world as much anymore, and he knows. I mean, he's kind of like pretty close to the chopping block. If you talk about him voting to impeach Trump, you can also talk about his speech that he gave in the early hours of January 7th on the House or on the Senate floor. I don't know if you recall that.
Yeah.
Um, but I remember watching that thinking like, good on this guy, for actually like standing up for what's right and speaking out. Um, yeah, I think that's just it. I think he's kind of found himself in a little bit of a Kinzinger slash Cheney situation. Not to the same gravity because he's a senator, not a member of the House, and he's not up for re-election every 2 years. But yeah, I do think you're right. I think he's just over it.
I think so. Yeah, I mean, you talk about some of the things he said. I will even say recently, right when uh, Ketanji Brown Jackson, right during her confirmation hearings, and I mean, we saw it, right? She was taking, she was taking a lot of heat from some senators, and I don't know if you caught what Senator Sass said during the confirmations, but I thought he actually did a nice job interviewing her. He kind of just tried to calm everybody down, if you will. And I think at one point he talked about people, using a stage or a time of a confirmation of a Supreme Court justice as a chance to get their YouTube moments. And I think he even used the term jackassery at some point. So um, he strikes me as a kind of senator who, does what he feels is right and doesn't sell out. I don't think he does anyway. Phil, let me ask you this though. Is this the end of him politically, or does he come back down the road maybe when things have changed a bit? What are your thoughts there? Do we see him again?
Oh man, that's a hard one to predict. I really don't know. I would bet he is going to um I would bet he is going to go into the um less public, even though it's still a public sector job, but very much less public um place, and he's probably going to stay there. I mean, I don't know a lot of details about him. Does he have young kids? I mean, he's a younger guy for being in the Senate.
Yeah.
Um, but maybe this is doesn't want to do the whole um, live in one state and work in another kind of, or work in Washington D.C. Kind of thing anymore. I don't know that we see this guy involved in politics again.
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't know that we do either. I think he's going to get down there. He does have some children. I'm not sure their ages, but he's 50 years old, so he's still got a lot of life left in front of him. And I think he's going to get down there to Florida, start enjoying himself. And you know what? He's certainly got name recognition. This guy can get in the spotlight if he wants to. I mean, talk shows and political, roundtable discussions, whatever, like that kind of stuff. He can jump on it. People, as well as I do, people will have him on, want to hear what he's got to say. I think he's kind of got the world
It's
in his
funny.
hands.
Yeah, it's funny. I was gonna say I wouldn't be surprised if we do see him on on the evening news shows, the cable news kind of circuit that some of these politicians do after
I
they leave
mean,
Congress.
why not? For a guy like him, why not jump in there? So, but yeah, I thought it was some sad news. I hate to see a guy like him go. I think he's a man of integrity. But yeah, we'll see. But yeah, it looks like he's probably going to step down. But you know what, Phil? Speaking of the Senate, I don't think we can discuss the Senate without talking about this news. How about Mr. Herschel Walker down there in Georgia and this abortion scandal, if you will? What do you think about that?
Yeah, reporting from I believe the Daily Wire that or the Daily
Daily
Beast
Beast.
it
Yeah, it was
was
Daily
that
Beast.
said that in 2009, yeah, in 2009 he had paid for an abortion for a girlfriend, and she had said she had some proof, and we didn't kind of all see it, but now it's started to trickle in, and then he came out and said, "I don't even know who she is." Well, it turns out he does know who she is because she's the mother of one of his children. Um, and I don't. It's crazy because I mean, does this mean yet there's yet another illegitimate child out there, or is this one of the mother of one of the kids that's already kind of been out there as one of his, three illegitimate children? Either way,
I,
it is not. This is not looking good for him, and he's not handling it particularly well after the initial. Oh, I don't even know who that is. The Democrats are just trying to win this race.
Well, it's funny as you say, not handling it well. I mean, the story that just keeps going on and on and on. I mean, the plot keeps thickening, right? The New York Times has released an article not long ago where they said he urged this woman to have a second abortion, right? I mean, now she's saying that he wanted her to have a second one. So the thing about it he's digging himself a hole. I mean, the Daily Beast comes out. They said they've got an image of the check that he wrote back in 2009 and receipt from the abortion clinic, and then they've got a copy of this get well card, I guess, that he gave to the woman, or she still has a copy. She showed him. The Daily Beast, I guess, had that stuff. Now, some of the other networks have said that they haven't been able to, confirm all that, but nevertheless, this is all over the news now. And I don't know if you saw this, but he's got a son. I forget the son's name. I want to say it might be Christian Walker. Regardless, though, one of his sons from, I guess, one of his girlfriends or whatever,
Yeah, who's the
is
kind of budding.
so he's a young, I guess, young conservative guy. He's shows up on social media a lot. Anyway, he went on a rant the other night about his dad and basically had a plea to Republicans, if you will, saying, "Hey, stop being fooled by this guy." He treated he basically said he treated his mom like garbage. He's fathering children all over the place. He's says one thing about abortion, yet he's running around having women get them. I think he talked about the violence this guy's been or spoken of violence in the past and stuff. So, I mean, things just seem to be a mess down there. But I mean, I'll be honest with you. I heard some people this week, some conservative commentators saying, "Who cares? The guy can lie every day for all I care. Vote for him because we want control of the Senate." So, does this affect him much in the Senate race, Phil? I mean, I don't know that it does.
I think it will eventually, especially because he keeps trying to take the standpoint of being a good Christian man, and and he's been forgiven for his sins and his mistakes in the past or whatnot. which is a weird stance to take when you're running against a literal reverend that was a reverend, not only a prominent one in the state of Georgia, but one that, even preached at Martin Luther King's former church, right?
Yeah, I mean there has been some scandal. I don't even know if scandal the right word, but there has been some discussion on Warnock, and I guess he's had some issues with his spouse and some problems he's dealt with in his past as well. But I don't think it's at quite at this level. I mean, I don't think he's quite dug the grave that Herschel Walker has. Nobody's perfect, right? But it just seems like with Walker, it's one thing after another, and where it might impact him, I guess could be with independents maybe down there in Georgia, I guess. Possibly like suburban Republican moderate women maybe find his kind of behavior disgusting or despicable, if you will. So it could affect him there. The Senate race though is it's pretty tight down there. I mean, Warnock's got a slight lead. Phil, I think you have some polling data on that, didn't you? Or you were looking at it earlier?
I was looking at it earlier. I don't have it pulled up, and I didn't take any specific notes on it. I didn't know we were transitioning that quickly into races.
Well, I mean, we don't have to. I just
The
was kind of saying about how it's impacting him and how this is kind of going on. But I mean, feel
Yeah,
free
Phil.
to
Let's
keep
let's
talking
go ahead
about it.
and
But
let's go ahead and transition into races. The only thing I wanted to say was I heard a funny commentary piece because you talked about how he's digging the hole, and somebody said on some of the commentary I was watching that they're like Herschel Walker must not understand how a shovel works. So I just took that as a pretty funny piece. But yeah, getting to his race, so he's running against Reverend Raphael Warnock, the incumbent senator, who was struggling in the polls. It looks like he's doing a little bit better now. Pull it up since you put me on the spot for it. But do you remember what it was I said about it to you earlier?
so I remember you and I were talking about it before the podcast, and I thought, I mean, I think one poll had Warnock up 4, and I think you told me you saw a poll that had him up 11 or 12, which I mean seems like a huge
Yeah, so
lead.
he's up.
I mean
Yeah, so
that
he's
seems like
up
a lot.
about 4. Yeah, he's up 4 in the aggregate, the polling aggregate. I What I told you earlier was the Survey USA that ended on the 4th of October that had him up um, by 12, and it is a A-rated survey. And now again, these are hard things to judge, and so they got 1,076 responses in this poll, which is actually pretty normal for a lot of these polls, especially in statewide races. Um, but it's still not a lot, in my opinion, to get a good kind of bearing of where things are at or going to be at least in 5 weeks.
Yeah, I think. I mean, this is a race that a few weeks ago I think I was on a podcast and I said I think Walker's going to win it. I still think he's poised to do well down there just because I think there are so many people, as I said earlier, that aren't really looking at him as a person, as a candidate, whatever. They simply see that if they can get him elected, it's just one more vote, in the Senate for Republicans. And I think Georgia being a fairly red state, I think Walker's still positioned very well to win this thing. Um, but I mean, who knows? I mean, as time goes on, I mean, who knows what's going to break next week for a scandal because he just seems to be this ever revolving door of news cycles. I mean, we talk, you and I kind of joke sometimes that we have the weekly Trump updates and his weekly news stuff. I mean, I almost feel like we're kind of at the point where we're having the weekly Herschel Walker update.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, but yeah, who knows? It looks like it could be a fairly close race, and I think moving forward we'll see. You want to go to another spot in Georgia and talk about
Yeah.
what appears to be a national race, not just a right. I mean, it's
Yeah.
not just a congressional district at this
Well,
point. This is a national race.
so let's look at Georgia, stay in Georgia, look at their 14th congressional race. And this is a race I will call right now. I'll make a prediction very easily. This is so everybody knows though, this is Marjorie Taylor Greene's district. She's running against a guy named Marcus Flowers, who's an Army veteran. The interesting thing here is the amount of money being raised. I mean, Phil, you talked about it earlier. how this thing's got national attention. I mean, Flowers has raised $10.8 million, and this is a race that, I mean, he has almost no chance of winning. This is a very, very red district. Trump won this thing by 40 points in 2020. I mean, and yet money is pouring in for this guy. I mean, now to be fair, Marjorie Taylor Greene has raised a lot of money also. But yeah, I mean, this doesn't appear to at all be competitive. And speaking of candidate quality, Marcus Flowers has had some issues as well. Um, he's had, his ex-wife has talked about, some drama there. I think about how he abandoned her and some of these other things. But I mean, all eyes seem to be on because of the amount of money is being raised. And Green, as we've talked about, she's a polarizing figure, right? Either people love her or hate her, and there are people that are sending money down to Georgia, this particular district, just trying to give it to whomever might be running against her. So, I mean, I got to give the guy credit. He's raised a lot of money, but Phil, this guy's got no chance. Marjorie Taylor Greene is going to run away with this thing.
No, it absolutely. I agree with you 100%. The one thing that I wonder about this is that and I don't know all the ins and outs about the political finance and fundraising laws. Um, but you think there's a chance that he takes this money and goes for something bigger down the road?
I
I
mean,
mean,
maybe. I mean, I guess I'm like you. I don't know exactly what the laws are with the money they're raising, but I mean, maybe he surfaces again. I mean, we could see him possibly, trying to run for another office, I guess, down there in Georgia. Um, I don't know how committed he is to politics, but I mean, honestly, if he wants to beat Marjorie Taylor Greene 2 years from now, he should switch parties and then run against her as a Republican in the primary. I mean, honestly, right? If that's what he really wants to do is defeat her, like that's probably the way that Marjorie Taylor Greene gets beat is actually at the primary level, because it's a very red district. So, yeah, I don't know. I mean, he may stick around, or he may take his 15 minutes of fame and just disappear after this. I don't know, but I mean, do you agree with me though, Phil? If somebody wants to beat her, the way to beat her is in the primary.
yeah, no, I agree 100%. But I agree with you that this year I don't think he stands a chance.
No, no.
Now, if we shift gears, we're going to talk about another fairly controversial Congresswoman, Lauren Boebert's race out in the third district in Colorado. What are your thoughts on this one?
Well, it seems to be tightening. I mean, there's a poll here that just came out, a Keating Research poll from end of September, early October, that's got Bobert only up by 2 points, so 47 to 45, and so Adam Frisch, her opponent, who we talked about him at length, a few episodes ago, he's gaining ground. I mean, there's been a 5 point swing in this thing here in just the last few weeks. Another thing that Bobert's got to watch, is polls show she is pretty unpopular right now with independents in her state. So, I mean, she's got to watch these kind of things because momentum is definitely on the side of this Frisch, who, like we talked about, says he's running, to be a normal candidate. He's, fairly moderate kind of guy, etc. But the one thing though I will say is it's a pretty red district. And here's what I thought was interesting: the 530, the 538 still gives her a 98% chance of winning this thing, even after all this momentum shift and this guy surging in the polls. They're still pretty confident, seem to be pretty confident anyway, that she's going to win out there. Phil, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I think it's going to be a close race. I think this is going to be one we're watching on the morning of the ninth. I don't think we're going to know this one probably that night because it's going to be that close. So we'll see. There's still a couple of weeks left. Congress is not going to be in session until after the election, so
Yep.
they're doing is staying at home. Well, most of them are at home working on their election bid. I think that this one's going to be a tight race. I'm not willing to call it either way. I would hope that she gets unseated, but who knows? We'll see.
Well, I mean, I'll make a prediction, I guess, that she wins just based on, if nothing else, what the people in the know seem to be predicting out there. But I'll say this: let's say she doesn't win this thing. she's that woman's probably not conceding. Let's say that we wake up on the ninth and she's, somehow this Frisch has beat her or it looks like he's beat her. She's probably not going to go down easy. I mean, that will probably be another thing that drags out forever about election fraud and this, that, and the other. But yeah, I mean, we'll see. I think it's kind of newsworthy about how this Adam Frisch seems to be surging in the polls here. So we'll keep an eye on that one. But one more race to look at here, Phil. Let's go out to your state of Washington. You want to tell us a little bit about that Senate race out there between Patty Murray and Tiffany Smiley?
Yeah, so it doesn't look like Patty Murray has any possible shot of getting unseated. She's the current, one of the current senators from Washington State. But the one thing I will say is just being back in the state for the first time in a while, I am amazed at the amount of advertising and money being spent by Smiley, the Republican opposition. Now, obviously, in a state like Washington, you would probably have to spend a lot of money to get elected in a statewide race as a Republican. But man, it is full bore. Couple weeks left. That people's ballots are already out there, so people have already probably voted around the state. But it's amazing, the amount of money being spent, at least. But I will say one of the unique things about this is we typically characterize the kind of political lean in the state of Washington by the location, right? Because it's very geographic. I know we always kind of talk about cities are are more blue and rural areas are more red, but Washington's kind of got a unique blend of those because it's a lot of urban and rural mixture.
Hmm.
Um, Now, the one thing I will say is Eastern Washington, for the most part, outside of Spokane, which is a college town, decent sized city, but around that whole area, basically from the Cascades all the way out to the Idaho border, is typically pretty red. And one of the things I noticed driving through the state, this week was that I saw a giant barn that was the whole side of the barn facing the highway was painted. That was like a vote Patty Murray thing, which I did not expect to see out in Eastern Washington, probably half an hour to an hour outside of Spokane. So I was pretty amazed at that. What do
I
you
just
what do
want to,
you
well, I just want to
think?
say this. I just want to say this, Phil. I think the fact that somebody in Eastern Washington has painted a barn for a Democratic senator in favor of, I think that in and of itself is kind of newsworthy. I wouldn't expect that out there. And by the way, painting a barn, now, was it actually painted or was this like some giant sign on the side?
So it may have been like a banner or something that was affixed to the side of the barn, but it looked like and granted I was driving, so I didn't have a chance to focus on it, but it looked like it was painted.
Wow.
Please, if somebody knows that it's not, I'm not, don't have to fact check me on that. But yeah, I mean, um, the whole either way, the whole side of the barn was like a giant, vote Patty Murray,
Well,
for U.S. Senate.
I only asked because I was just going to say, man, if somebody's out there like literally painting a barn, that's bold, man. That guy's spending some money, or guy and gal, husband, wife, whatever. They're spending some money on that deal. But yeah, interesting.
I mean, that's J.R. Majewski level, like making your entire
Painting the
lawn a,
lawn,
a
yeah.
devotion to President Trump.
Yeah, painting the lawn, yeah.
So,
But no, yeah, I looked at this race a little bit. Murray, the longtime incumbent out there, she's comfortably ahead. I'm surprised they're spending this much money on Smiley out there because honestly, I don't think she's got a shot out there in Washington. I feel very comfortable predicting Patty Murray takes that seat and continues on with it. But I'm looking at the clock here, and we've had another great episode yet again. I think we've talked about a lot of good things here. Before we sign off, I want to give a little plug out or a little shout out, if I will, though, to our social media. Um, hit us up on our website, and it's got links to our other social medias, pocketpolitics.co. Certainly get on our Facebook page, our Instagram, send us an email, cameronandphil@gmail.com. We'd love to hear from you. And we're putting plenty of content on the Facebook page. I know I've been on there this week. There's been a lot of things actually added on there this week because there's quite honestly been a lot in the news. But, all our stuff, we're active on it. Hit us up. We appreciate the listeners we got out.
And we had a comment from a listener this week too that mentioned, he said you should encourage your listeners to ask you questions if they don't understand something. So if there's something we talk about, maybe you're not 100% clear, send us that feedback. Send us an email, reach out to us on social media, whatever the case is, and then we'll address that on the air and try and get further in depth and explain it, especially considering that the news cycle is going to slow down probably around the third or last week of November.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. So, okay, well, looks like we're about to wrap up here, so it's time for our parting shots. Phil, what do you got for your parting shot this week?
Well, I think I was kind of just talking about seeing political stuff on the road. I spent 5 days driving across the country. Drove through some states that have a lot of really close and really heated races in them. To name a few: Pennsylvania, Ohio, and Wisconsin.
Hmm.
Um, but I was gonna do this whole kind of like Facebook and Instagram collage of all these political signs as I drove through the states, and literally I saw more signs in Washington State in a race that's pretty much not even going to be a close race than I saw in the entire rest of the drive. I mean, I saw one sign in Ohio that was in a neighborhood near the hotel, and I saw my second sign was in Minnesota for the Minnesota governor's race, and that was pretty much it. And I was just astonished. So a little bit of disappointment on my behalf. I didn't get to make it cool
I, I'm
across the nation.
I'm just blown away. That, and I've said that to you too in our private conversation. I am just blown away that in Pennsylvania and Ohio you weren't seeing stuff, and even Wisconsin. I would have thought you would have been tripping over the signs.
Maybe and I was actually on the lookout for him too, so I was trying to see him. Um, but either way, what do you got this week, Cam?
Well, I just want to go, I want to go global this week with my parting shot and just kind of point out, certainly in the news is the whole Russia Ukraine thing and Vladimir Putin. Now he's back in he's in the news again. Things aren't going well for him and his army there in Ukraine, or the Russians in Ukraine. People are saying he feels like he's backed into a corner, and now he's out there talking about and basically threatening nuclear weapons. Like he'll use them on Ukraine. He says he's going to use them to defend Russia and Russian territory. And he's not afraid to do it, and that's not some kind of empty promise. So yeah, I mean, he I guess he turned 70. I think it was today. And so people are talking about that. They're saying as he gets older, he just seems to be getting more unhinged. Apparently, the people in Russia, as he comes out and addresses, the country, he's always in hiding now. People don't know where he's at. He's got bunkers all over the place. So, and his bunkers are set up for him to survive these nuclear fallouts or whatever. So, I'm keeping an eye on things over there, as I think a lot of people around the world are and should be right now, because the last thing that, we need is some unhinged, mad dictator, if you will, out there using nuclear weapons. So yeah, yeah. I mean, it's not exactly a happy parting shot I've got this week, but I think it's something out there that everybody needs to keep an eye on. So that's what I got this week.
Absolutely. Well, that I think that's a great one. Yeah, please, if you're listening out there, stay informed. It looks like there's the potential for it to get crazy, but to wrap it up, Cam, and I think another great episode, and I'll look forward to talking to you next week.
All right. Until next time.
All right. Bye.